Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about something that many of us face when we're considering starting a new business venture. Discerning whether God is blessing our path or warning us to reconsider. Starting a business is one of the most significant decisions we can make in our lives. It affects not just our finances, but our time, our relationships, our mental health, and most importantly, our spiritual walk. While God often blesses entrepreneurial endeavors and has given many of us the gifts and talents to create businesses that serve others and glorify Him, there are times when He may be trying to redirect our path. The question isn't whether God wants us to succeed. He absolutely does. The question is whether the specific business we're considering aligns with His will for our lives at this particular time. Today we'll explore 5 clear signs that God may be warning you to step back and reconsider the business you want to start. Remember, these aren't meant to discourage you from entrepreneurship altogether, but to help you discern God's timing and direction more clearly. Sometimes what feels like a closed door is actually God's protection, steering us towards something better. 1. Persistent inner turmoil and lack of peace. The first sign that God may be warning you against a business venture is a persistent lack of peace about the decision. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not talking about normal entrepreneurial anxiety or the natural nervousness that comes with taking risks. Every business owner experiences some level of uncertainty and concern. What I'm referring to is something deeper, a constant nagging sense that something isn't right. It's that feeling in your spirit that won't go away no matter how much you pray about it or try to rationalize it away. The Bible tells us in Colossians 3:15 to let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. The word rule here is actually a sports term. It means to act as an umpire. God's peace should be the umpire in our decision-making process. When there's no peace, when there's constant inner turmoil, that's often God's way of saying wait or reconsider. I know a man who felt called to start a restaurant. On paper, everything looked good, great location, solid business plan, sufficient funding. But every time he prayed about it, he felt unsettled. His wife noticed he was losing sleep, becoming irritable, and seemed constantly stressed about something that hadn't even happened yet. After months of this inner turmoil, he finally decided to wait. 6 months later, 3 restaurants in that same area closed due to unexpected city construction that blocked access for nearly a year. God's lack of peace had been His protection. Here's how to recognize this sign. Are you losing sleep over the decision, not because of excitement, but because of worry? Do you find yourself constantly second-guessing, even when others are encouraging you? Are you experiencing unusual anxiety that doesn't match your normal personality? These could be indicators that God is urging caution. The peace of God isn't the absence of all concern. It's a deep sense of rightness and confidence that comes from being in alignment with His will. When that peace is consistently absent regarding a business decision, pay attention. 2. Consistent opposition from wise counselors. The second sign is when the wise counselors in your life are consistently expressing concerns or opposition to your business idea. Proverbs 15:22 says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." Now, I'm not saying that every person who questions your business idea is speaking for God. Sometimes people are just pessimistic, or they don't understand your vision, or they're projecting their own fears onto your situation. But when multiple people you trust and respect, people who have shown wisdom in their own lives and genuinely care about your well-being, are all raising similar concerns, that's worth serious consideration. These might be your spouse, your pastor, your mentor, successful business owners you know, or mature believers whose judgment you've learned to trust. When they say things like, "I'm concerned about the timing," "This doesn't seem like you," "I'm worried about the impact on your family," or "Something about this doesn't feel right," don't dismiss these voices quickly. I've seen too many people ignore the consistent counsel of wise advisors, only to later wish they had listened. A woman in our community wanted to start a high-end boutique in an area where the demographic research clearly showed it wouldn't succeed. Her husband, her business-savvy father, and 2 successful female entrepreneurs all expressed concerns. She interpreted their caution as lack of faith in her abilities and moved forward anyway. The business failed within 18 months, causing significant financial strain and relationship damage that could have been avoided. The key word here is consistent. If one person has concerns, that's worth noting. If multiple wise counselors are all expressing similar reservations, that's often God speaking through his people to protect you from making a costly mistake. 3. Doors consistently closing despite your best efforts. The third sign is when doors keep closing, no matter how hard you try to open them. You can't get the funding you need. The perfect location falls through at the last minute. Key partnerships dissolve unexpectedly. Permits are denied for reasons that don't make sense. Suppliers back out. Equipment breaks down before you even start. Sometimes what we interpret as spiritual warfare or temporary setbacks are actually God's way of redirecting our path. Yes, every business faces obstacles, and persistence is often necessary for success. But there's a difference between normal business challenges and a pattern of closed doors that seems almost supernatural in its consistency. I remember reading about a man who tried for 2 years to start a food truck business. Every truck he tried to buy had major mechanical problems that weren't disclosed. 3 different city permits were denied for technical reasons. 2 different business partners backed out at the last minute. His bank loan was approved, then mysteriously denied after final review. He kept pushing forward, thinking he was showing faith and perseverance. Finally, exhausted and frustrated, he decided to wait and pray more seriously about the direction. During that waiting period, a former colleague offered him a position in corporate training that matched his skills perfectly and paid better than the food truck ever could have. Later, he discovered that the food truck industry in his city became oversaturated, and most of the trucks that started around that time failed within a year. The principle here is discernment. Are these normal business obstacles that require persistence and wisdom to overcome? Or is there a pattern of closed doors that suggests God is trying to redirect your path? Prayer and wise counsel can help you distinguish between the two. When God closes doors, He's often protecting us from something we can't see or preparing us for something better. Sometimes our timing is off. Sometimes the business itself isn't the right fit. Sometimes we need more preparation or different circumstances. 4. The venture would compromise your values or harm your relationships. The fourth sign that God may be warning you against a business venture is if it would require you to compromise your Christian values or significantly damage your important relationships. Let's talk about values first. Some business opportunities seem profitable but would require you to operate in ways that conflict with biblical principles. Maybe it's a business that profits from people's addictions or weaknesses. Maybe it requires you to be deceptive in your marketing or treat employees poorly to maintain profit margins. Maybe it involves partnerships with people whose business practices are questionable. I know someone who was offered a lucrative opportunity to open a franchise that served alcohol as its primary revenue source. While there's nothing inherently sinful about serving alcohol, this particular person had struggled with alcoholism in the past and had seen alcohol destroy relationships in his family. Despite the financial opportunity, he recognized that being surrounded by alcohol daily and profiting from its sale would be spiritually dangerous for him personally. That was God's warning specific to his situation. Sometimes the values compromise is more subtle. Maybe the business would require you to work 7 days a week, making it impossible to honor the Sabbath or participate in church community. Maybe it would demand so much of your time that you couldn't be the spouse or parent God has called you to be. Which brings us to relationships. God designed us for relationship, with Him first, but also with our families and communities. If a business venture would severely damage these relationships, that's often a warning sign. I've counseled married couples where one spouse wanted to start a business that would require the other spouse to sacrifice their own calling or career dreams. I've seen parents consider businesses that would take them away from their children during critical developmental years. I've witnessed people pursue ventures that would strain their marriages to the breaking point. Now, starting a business always requires some sacrifice and adjustment from family members. But there's a difference between temporary adjustments and fundamental compromises to your role as a spouse or parent. If your spouse is consistently expressing concern that the business would harm your marriage, or if your children would rarely see you, or if the venture would require you to relocate away from aging parents who need your support. These are serious considerations. God's calling on your life includes your calling as a family member. A business opportunity that would undermine your ability to fulfill these fundamental relationships is often not from God, regardless of how profitable it might be. The question to ask yourself is, will this business venture help me become more like Christ and better fulfill my roles as a spouse, parent, and member of my community? Or will it require me to compromise in these areas? If it's the latter, proceed with extreme caution. The fifth and final sign that God may be warning you against a business venture is if your primary motivation is greed, pride, or fear, rather than a genuine sense of calling and service. Let's examine each of these motivations. Greed is the most obvious one. If you're primarily motivated by the desire to get rich quick, to accumulate wealth for its own sake, or to fund a lifestyle of excess, that's a red flag. The Bible warns repeatedly about the love of money being the root of all kinds of evil. This doesn't mean Christians can't be wealthy or that profit is wrong, but when the pursuit of money becomes the primary driving force, we're often heading for trouble. Pride is perhaps more subtle but equally dangerous. Are you considering this business primarily to prove something to others? To show that you're successful, important, or capable? To gain status or recognition? If your identity and self-worth are tied up in the success of this venture, that's dangerous spiritually and practically. Fear-based motivation is when you're starting a business primarily because you're afraid of your current situation. Maybe you hate your job and want to escape. Maybe you're afraid of being laid off. Maybe you're worried about financial security. While these can be legitimate concerns, when fear is the primary driver, we often make poor decisions. Here's the key principle. God-honoring businesses are usually motivated by a desire to serve others, solve real problems, use the gifts and talents God has given you, and create value for customers and community. When the primary motivation is self-serving, whether through greed, pride, or fear, that's often a warning sign. The right motivation doesn't guarantee success, but wrong motivation almost guarantees problems, even if the business initially appears successful. I've seen people build profitable businesses on wrong motivations, only to find themselves empty, stressed, and spiritually dry because they weren't operating from God's heart for their work. So there you have it. 5 signs that God may be warning you against the business you want to start. Persistent lack of peace, consistent opposition from wise counselors, doors that keep closing despite your efforts, requirements to compromise your values or damage relationships, and motivations rooted in greed, pride, or fear. If you recognize one or more of these signs in your situation, don't despair. God's warnings are acts of love, not punishment. He may be protecting you from something harmful, preparing you for better timing, or redirecting you towards something that better fits His plan for your life. Take time to pray, seek wise counsel, and wait for God's clear direction. His timing is perfect, and His plans for you are good. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is not moving forward with our own plans, but waiting for His. Remember, God is not opposed to your success. He wants to prosper you in ways that align with His purposes and bring glory to His name. Trust His guidance, even when it means waiting or changing direction. Thank you for watching and praying along. Kindly share and subscribe for daily prayers.